Good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 26 of Nationalist Review. We've reached we've passed the quarter mark now in the program, and quarter of the way to 100 episodes. So we'll be there very soon, especially at this 2-a-week pace. Good to have you here. Good to have you on this chilly morning, overcast morning, looking like not like a winter wonderland out there, but looking like a very dreary winter outside my window here. Got the wraparound monitors, got a bunch of information, a bunch of content for today's show. I think you will really enjoy it. Joined as always by Nick Fuentes, recently retweeted by Paul Nealon. How's it going?
It's going well. It's going strong. Back in the saddle here with Nationalist Review and America First. We're fully back from Christmas break, back to business, back to the content mindset. So I'm very excited. There's lots to talk about. For the past couple of shows, we get one or two big stories, but there is much going on in the world, my friend. How are you doing today?
Doing good. And yeah, like you mentioned, back to the content production mindset. With that in mind, I will actually be launching my new show. I'm going to be doing a daily, so every day except Wednesday, I guess, every weekday except Wednesday, 4 days a week, daily 1-hour podcast program right here on America First Media, right here on this very Spreaker account is where you can find it. Either use Spreaker or Libsyn. We're not sure yet, but yeah, we're doing a 1-hour show every day, and I think that'll be a good way to keep you all up to date with the daily content that I would like to be doing. And it's a different format than the live show, but we have a lot of people out there, myself included, who prefer to listen to the podcast. They listen while they're driving, they listen while they're doing work, they listen while they're on the way to school or wherever, on the bus or whatever. And so the podcast is a lot more accessible format for them. So we'll be having three main shows here, three main content offerings. We'll be doing America First, of course. Nick will be doing that every weekday evening at 5 p.m. Pacific. I will be doing the daily show, yet to come up with a title for that. We'll figure that out. That'll be launching on Monday. And then we'll be doing this, of course, every Wednesday and Saturday. So a lot of content in the works for you guys. That's coming out to what? Like 16 hours a week of content. So it's almost like a part-time job, just listening to everything that we put out there for people. It'll be great. It'll be very good. So yeah, all that's coming up next week. But yeah, in terms of updates, we do have a couple updates here for everybody. There is still time to order mugs. We still have a back order, not a back order. We still have a good quantity of those in stock here. They have yet to arrive actually at our makeshift distribution center. They said they would be here today, so we're waiting on those. I'm gonna have to call that supplier, but we'll be getting those out as soon as we get them, and they'll be going out. They always ship via 2 or 3 day shipping, so as soon as we get them, you'll have them nearly right away. So still time to order those at amfirsmedia.com/shop. We will be launching t-shirts as well in the next couple weeks, so stay tuned for that. If you want to send us letters, notes, donations via check, whatever you want to do, or packages, whatever you want, send those to P.O. Box 236, Pullman, Washington 99163. I still have this game here, Nick. This Triggered game is sitting here on my desk and yet to play it. And I also have that Methods of Ethics book. It's a very thick book that somebody sent us, and definitely one that requires some deep thought and deep reading. Big brain nibbas only on that book.
Can't wait to play the Triggered game once we go on tour or whatever. Once we reunite after Charlottesville, we got to get that's a comfy board game stream going. A little hot cocoa, or if it's in the spring, I don't know what drink iced tea maybe. Get the board game going. That'll be a very cozy stream, I'm predicting.
Yeah, I think it will be. The Triggered game looks fun. I mean, we read through it last time on air. We can maybe do that over webcam or something. A little bonus content for America First. We still do owe the people a trad Oregon Trail stream that we never followed through on. Colonizing and settling the West. We never followed through with that. So we got a lot of games that we owe you. Devoted audience members out there, so we'll get to those all in very short order. Go to amfirsmedia.com for articles. I'm actually going to be posting this article that I wrote on Iran. I'm going to be posting that up probably today, a little bit later on today. and follow Amherst Media on Twitter, a Twitter account that I am actually not a part of. So please no ban, Jack Dorsey. It's just a company Twitter. And you can join our Discord server, of course, linked below. Speaking of Iran, we will definitely talk about that here later on in the program, but I did a video on the Iran situation called War Pigs, The Truth About the Iran Protests, that you can find on my individual YouTube channel that, not to shill or anything, but I do think is quite good and pretty important. So if you have the time, got 15 minutes, go check that video out, and you will probably be a little bit informed by that. We go deep into who is really pulling the strings in Iran, so to speak, and with this whole Iranian Revolution thing, which we'll also talk about here a little bit later on. So, Nick, WTF, I hate Drumpf now. I'm ready for Drumpf to be BTFO.
Yeah, why do you say that?
We need to drop Blumpf. Well, because he is getting a little bit wacky. He's getting a little bit off message. Drumpf is he's forgetting why he was elected.
How do you mean? Are you referring to the recent news about DACA?
I'm referring to Drumpf, this dopey boomer who we elected president, tweeting out on January 2nd at 7:16 a.m. Democrats are doing nothing for DACA, just interested in politics. DACA activists and Hispanics will go hard against Dems, will start falling in love with Republicans and their president. We are about results. So, Trump is really trying to get those illegal alien criminals to fall in love with Republicans. And the MAGA-tards, I'm sure, are going to love this.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with him. But again, like I was in August, I still feel we need to see what actually results from this talk. Because it's just talk. That may sound like overly defensive of the president or like Bill Mitchell tier stuff, but really we heard a lot of disconcerting things after he repealed DACA several months ago, and nothing materialized out of that in the short term. So I agree, it's disconcerting. I'm uncomfortable with it.
So if it was just an isolated incident, I would agree. I mean, we've been through this before in the show.
Right.
But unfortunately, it's not just an isolated incident. This is the new narrative emerging from the White House. And we're seeing this from Kirstjen Nielsen, the Secretary of DHS, who was coming out and telling Fox News the Trump administration would consider immigration legislation that includes a pathway to citizenship for hundreds of thousands of young people. The U.S. Homeland Security Secretary said Tuesday, while emphasizing no final decision has been made and the border wall remains the priority. Even moving the grounds for negotiation, even moving the window for negotiation to include a pathway to citizenship, which is further left than most Democrats were even asking for. Most Democrats were just asking for a permanent status, for permanent legal status for these people. Asking for a pathway for citizenship was seen as very, very brazen. But for Kirstjen Nielsen to essentially give the negotiation away and say, oh yeah, we'll consider that. You're allowing, this is, the art of the deal. You're conceding too much and returning next to nothing.
Yeah, well, again, I think we got to see the deal. I know that may sound, and I understand where you're coming from, where you say if this were isolated behavior, that would be one thing. But really, I think you cannot, after 2 or 3 years, I think we're coming up on 3 years this summer of Donald Trump, I don't think it's prudent not to divorce his words from his actions. I think the bluster, the rhetoric is part of making the deal. So, them saying that they would consider a deal, them saying they were, maybe drafting something, I'll believe it when I see it. These were the same people that misled everybody that they were going to go to war in Syria in April. And, that never materialized. Same people that they
decided
alluded
Iran was
to.
a better target.
Well, again, has that happened yet? Have they assembled 250,000 ground troops and $1 trillion to invade Iran? I don't think so. So, again, this is what always happens with the alt-right, with people who are skeptical of Donald Trump, is they're just kind of always in waiting. They always have all these black pill, misery pills just locked and loaded for when they hear something they don't like. And then all of a sudden, you'd think we were at war in the Middle East and, everything's terrible. He's already given amnesty. We have to wait and see what happens. We have to wait and see what happens. And look, I agree with you if he legalizes the DACA aliens and we don't get an amazing deal. I would agree with you. But, we got to wait and see what happens.
Right, but the point is, you need to push back against this. The point is that you can't just rally around Trump and say, "Oh yeah, this is great. Do what you're going to do, Donald Trump." Case in point is you look at this Trump tweet about DACA, and the top response. I'm in a incognito window here, so it's not biased by my own following or I can still log into my Twitter account. I can still read Twitter on my Twitter account. It's very weird. Yeah, but the top response to Trump's tweet, which that he read, is who cares who they fall in love with? They're criminals who've stolen from us long enough. Send them home and DACA, right? And so this is the kind of thing that Trump needs to be hearing from his base, right? The base needs to be coming out and telling him that this is not what we elected you for. We elected you to send these people home. So it's not time to It's not time to start burning the Trump effigies and burning the MAGA hats and stuff over these words, but it's time to levy some pressure on this guy who we elected and tell him, hey, look, if you cave on this one key thing you promised your base, you're not going to have, you can't count on our support going forward, right? We're not going to be just automatic votes for you in the future. So that's what we have to do. We have to leverage our importance to Donald Trump as his base to come out and tell him that we're not going to stand for a deal. We don't want the DACA kids here. Because you think about what he's hearing all day. He's hearing from his Beltway advisors who are telling him that a deal would make you so popular, Trump, and everybody would love you, and the Hispanics would love you, and you would win a massive re-election, and Reagan 88 all over again, and all this stuff, Reagan 84, and we know that's not going to happen. We know that would not happen if you were to pass amnesty. So pushing back against these signals, this is a very basic thing they do in politics, right? They'll send out trial balloons to gauge the response. I think that's literally what the term is, a trial balloon. And they'll send these out to gauge how the base responds to it and then guide policy from there. And I think that we saw this earlier on back in August, was it, when Trump was putting out feelers about a DACA deal, and the base responded with a resounding no, don't do a DACA deal. And I think they listened to that. So doing the same thing over again and responding in kind is I think good praxis for all of us who want to see immigration cracked down on.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that you need to leverage the president, and I'm a strong believer in that. I think you're right. A lot of the base's response, because it wasn't just people like us on Twitter, but it was people like Sean Hannity. It was people like Ann Coulter that busted his balls over DACA and Syria and some of the other things. And, he watches television religiously. He watches his commentators. And I think he is very sensitive to those people that are in media, those kind of media allies that he has. And, so, yeah, I don't disagree that you need to leverage him, and we need to make it clear that would be unacceptable. But, I just come at it from my honest analysis, which is, we can leverage if the intent is to leverage, and obviously that's what we should do, but I don't believe we'll see anything out of it. It's always a good thing to throw leverage in case, it's always good to pressure him and show him that that's not what we want. If he thinks he could get away with that, he may, But just in my estimation, I think that before anybody seriously jumps ship, before anybody, outside of a leverage kind of a play calculation, jumps ship and says, like you said, burning Trump and the effigy, burning the MAGA hats and everything, I think we got to wait and see. But I agree, nothing wrong with showing our muscle, flexing our political muscle there. So.
Yeah, and again, this is one of those two things, and we've mentioned this before, that if there's amnesty, that's, look elsewhere for a vote in 2020, blumph, because I'm not going to vote for somebody who pushes amnesty, who signs amnesty. Not going to happen. And I think that's the way a lot of our people are, is this is the one issue that you cannot give away because of its importance and how it determines everything else. So, very important there. Speaking of somebody who pushed amnesty, who was actually the guy who was one of the first senators to support the DREAM Act in 2001. Orrin Hatch, the senator from Utah, has decided he is going to resign from Politico. Hatch, who also chaired the Senate Judiciary Committee, was among the first senators to support the DREAM Act with Senator Dick Durbin in 2001, legislation that would create a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants who came to the United States as minors. And the guy likely to replace him in Utah is, you guessed it, the former governor of Massachusetts. I love how politics in America is just such a clown show that you can just do like musical chairs and just like pick a new state to run and win in. It's Mitt Romney, former governor of Massachusetts, apparently going to run for Orrin Hatch's seat. So the cuck insurgency begins, I guess.
Yeah. It's so accurate the way you describe it with the musical chairs. I mean, does it get more rootless transnational than Mitt Romney holding statewide office in Massachusetts, being the governor there, running there for the presidency, and then now, out of pure political opportunism, out of naked political opportunism, is going to go to Utah and become the senator there? I mean, it's just... That is the epitome. That is peak rootless transnational elite that we're talking about. Like, that was how it was intended to work, right? You know, like that the government of, by, and for the people was intended that, you know, if you don't get the result you like, if you don't like the president, if you have these larger goals, well, you could pick up your shit, run somewhere else for office, you know? I mean, if you get on your knees enough for the right donors, you could pick up in Massachusetts and move to Utah, run for Senate there. So, I mean, it's just a joke. And that would be a really terrible thing in the sense that Mitt Romney is bad enough behind the scenes with the deep state and with these establishment operators. But in the Senate, he's going to cause a lot of trouble. I mean, they give him a platform. If he's in the Senate, he gets a national platform. He gets relevance. And
amplified cuckoldry.
Exactly, and he gets to sabotage whatever's going on in the Senate. He gets to sabotage what's going on in the House. He'll have a seat at the table. So this is a play by the deep state operators, and you look one by one, they're going after his majority. Whether it's Doug Jones, and now it's Mitt Romney coming in, and they're eating away. He's only got 52 seats there. And even then, you've got Susan Collins and Marco Rubio and some of these others that are not always a yes, John McCain and a few others, and then in the House. So this is people should be wary about this. This is the Empire Strikes Back in 2018.
Right. Well, the answer is, I guess, we have to meme Evan McMullin to run again as a Republican. So he splits the cuck vote in the primary. And then one of our guys can just cruise through with, 30, the Chad 33%, just cruise through and win the nomination. I think that's probably the ideal situation there. But yeah, this is sort of a disaster, and this speaks to the nature of Utah as a state and the religious predilections of that state and religious motivations of that state. And as we always say, it's those. Who's controlling the media? Obviously, the Mormons. This is not going to be good for anybody. This is not going to be good for Utah. I mean, Utah. It's interesting because Utah is actually like a state that politically you would think would be pretty right wing. Mm-hmm. You would think there would be no place for people like Mitt Romney politically in Utah. You would think they'd be nominating like Steve King types, very nativist types, but they don't. They pick the globalist squishes, whether that's Orrin Hatch, who was, again, the guy who was backing the DREAM Act, whether that's Mitt Romney, whether that's giving like 25% of the vote to Evan McMullin there's 18%, I guess, was what McMullin got in the 2016 election. Like, they do some weird stuff out there politically. Very, very weird state politically. And yeah, Romney's probably going to win. But hey, maybe we can get Steve Bannon to work for Romney's campaign so he'll lose.
That's good. Yeah, I wish. That might be nice. Yeah,
get the Alky Mick down there to work for Romney.
Yeah. Drive that one under the ground. Maybe in Utah there'll be a massive black turnout. Salt Lake City, right? No. Well, you're right. It is interesting about Utah, and what's more peculiar here is that what happens in 2020 if Mitt Romney runs for president? I mean, you got to be thinking long term like that. He would have the potential to be another spoiler candidate in Utah and probably far more successful. And if you're looking at states like Florida that are being overtaken by Puerto Rican refugees, and that won't be on the table, and you're looking at Democrats probably going to sew up the Midwest tight and some of these other states, and then Mitt Romney compromising Utah, they are manufacturing the downfall of Trump every day as we speak. So not good stuff. But yeah, maybe we get Bannon in there. Maybe we get Bannon to run the campaign, and it'll work.
Yeah, no, we gotta. First of all, we gotta have to get one of our guys to move to Utah, because if rootless transnational Mitt Romney can do it, we can do it. So let's get one of our guys who's 35 years old to move down to Utah, and maybe Nealon. We'll just get Nealon to move down there and run for both. I don't know, or yeah, just get somebody to move down there, and then we'll get Bannon working for Romney's campaign, and we'll give McMullen a bunch of money and hook him up with some Benny Palatzik type style benefits, if you know what I mean, and tell him to run for Senate again. We'll just create havoc down there. You're right. I think the 2020 thing, though, like, I don't see anybody really doing that. Whether it's Jeff Flake, who's talked about it, whether it's Mitt Romney, I cannot foresee one of these guys who is a total goober. Nobody really likes them. Nobody, and I don't mean that in like a sophomoric middle school nobody likes you kind of way. I mean that like nobody politically likes these people. Like nobody supports these people anymore, aside from some very aged, old guard GOP types. Like nobody really cares about these people anymore. Who is going to support them besides the donors?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you're right. You're right in the sense that there's no excitement for these establishment type candidates, not in Trump's base, not in the Tea Party base, not in the conservative base. It's these Nationalist Review Beltway types. Can you hear my phone ringing in the background?
Yeah, it's a nice touch.
What the fuck?
Really adds to the homegrown feel.
Give me a second. Let me shut up.
All right. Well, yeah. Okay. I'll carry the show. It's fine. I'll carry the show.
All right. The home. Usually we don't have a home phone down here, but that's neat life.
That's a rustic feel. How else are you gonna find out when you have tendies being delivered?
That's right. Yeah, it's like my walkie-talkie. Mom to Nick. Tendies are
tendies incoming.
Yeah, incoming. Yeah, right.
10-4.
But yeah, on the Jeff Flakes and stuff. That's never stopped them before, though. That's the thing, where you're right. I mean, there's no excitement that would not happen. But, I mean, just look at the 2016 election, where how long did Jeb Bush stay in the race? Long past his due date. How long did Lindsey Graham stay in the race? And Pataki and, all these other people. The presidency is a weird thing. Power is a weird thing where it makes people do things they wouldn't normally do. And so, I don't know. I think that a lot of people will dutifully be out there in 2020 to go against the president. And if not to win, then to just muddy the race, make the president look as bad as possible, because that's kind of what they tried to do in 2016. I imagine in 2020, and this is all very speculative, but I imagine in 2020, they would probably get in all the ugliest punches and kicks and make it look like he wasn't in control of his party, look like his own party's in revolt, and and then he'd be in real sore shape up against the Democrats, even if he made it out of the primary. But that's obviously speculative.
I think that the Democrats are too undisciplined to allow that to work, because you're right, that would win, right? We would think that would be a winning strategy, but I think we would see a Democrat break off and recognize the window of opportunity there, because while the nationalist Republicans, ostensibly nationalist Republicans, I mean, Trump is as nationalist as with Trump being as nationalist as he is, with the nationalist Republicans fighting against the establishment Republicans, you'd have an opportunity for one of the identity groups, or for the more DSA, like overtly socialist types of factions, to break off from the left and to say, okay, this is our window of opportunity. We're going to run our own guy too. And you could see a four-way race materializing. This is what people were thinking would happen, and what I was kind of game planning for if Trump were somehow defied the nomination, right? If he were to win the primaries but have the nomination stolen from him and Rubio put up or something, you could see Trump running independently, and you could also see Bernie Sanders or some other leftist candidate running independently, right? I think you could see that in 2020 if the Republicans did try to introduce the cuck candidate and the cuck vanguard to to try to run and usurp Trump. You could easily see the Democrats and the left fracture as well, and recognize that because conventional wisdom would be if somebody breaks off to the left of the Democrats, they're costing the Democrats the election. Well, in this case, it wouldn't be so, because there'd be a four-way split. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I could see that happening as well.
I would like for that to happen. That would be fun, because and really that would force a realignment along these real political lines that we've been talking about between the overtly globalist, pro-diversity, culturally Marxist corporate establishment on the left, and then the right-wing nationalists on the right.
Yeah, well, that would be totally unprecedented, and it won't happen only because of the money.
Yeah.
I don't think any. You've had third-party run before, and it's only because you had billions of dollars of private money that they could mobilize. But two additional parties getting like $1 billion. That's buku money. You can't do it. But I agree with you. That would be ideal, because it would really force the issue of establishment versus the people, and that's the alignment that we need. Not this right and left stuff, but this: do we want the establishment? Do we want the globalist Marxist party, or do we want the people, the American people? But
it did happen in 1933, so it's not entirely unprecedented.
Yeah, 80 years ago.
Yeah. So hey, this is a fun story, Nick. I know you've been one of the guys who has been the most ardent Bannon defenders, most ardent Bannon supporters over the past several months and weeks here. Tide is turning on old Steve here among a lot of people who not only in the mainstream media, which we could expect, but also from the president himself. So Steve Bannon recently went on record. He didn't go on record, but Steve Bannon recently was quoted in this new book that came out by, I don't know the name of who wrote this book. But anyways, there's a new book detailing kind of a White House insider take, right? And there's a lot of interesting quotes in here from Bannon that are direct quotes too. So if these are not legitimate, then Bannon has like legal recourse, right? These are not like allegedly he said this. This is a direct quote from Bannon. Apparently Bannon said, quote, "They're going to crack Don Jr. like an egg on national TV," Bannon said, according to excerpts released by The Guardian of this book. Bannon said that it was a bad idea for Don Jr. to meet with the Russian lawyer, said that it made him a liability to anyone probing the campaign's possible collusion with the Russians. Quote, the three senior guys in the campaign thought it was a good idea to meet with a foreign government inside Trump Tower in the conference room on the 25th floor with no lawyers. They didn't even have any lawyers, apparently quipped to Wolf. Even if you thought this was not treasonous or unpatriotic or bad shit, and I happen to think it's all of that, so he thinks it is treasonous and unpatriotic, you should have called the FBI immediately, he said, according to the excerpts. So, interesting statement there. Now, President Trump has actually responded to this with a very passionate take. President Trump said, "Steve Bannon has nothing to do with me or my presidency. When he was fired, he not only lost his job, he lost his mind. Steve was a staffer who worked for me after I'd already won the nomination by defeating 17 candidates, often described as the most talented field ever assembled in the Republican Party. Now that he's on his own, Steve is learning that winning isn't as easy as I make it look. Steve had very little to do with our historic victory, which was delivered by the forgotten men and women of this country. Yet Steve had everything to do with the loss of a Senate seat in Alabama, held for more than 30 years by Republicans. Steve doesn't represent my base. He's only in it for himself. Steve pretends to be at war with the media, which he calls the opposition party, yet he spent his time at the White House leaking false information to the media to make himself seem more important than he was. It was the only thing he does well. Steve was rarely in a one-on-one meeting with me, and he pretends to have influence to fool a few people with no access and no clue, whom he helped write phony books. We have many great Republican members of Congress and candidates who are supportive of the Make America Great Again agenda. Like me, they love the USA and are finally helping to take our country back and build it up rather than simply seeking to burn it all down." Implicit Nealon endorsement? I don't know.
The Nealon curse. has
Yeah,
afflicted Steve Bannon.
Those who betray Paul Nealon shall suffer the wrath.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know. This is all pretty much out of the blue, right? I mean, I could kind of sense a little bit of tension between Trump and Bannon, obviously, since the Alabama primary, but this kind of hostility, I did not expect what Steve Bannon said about Donald Trump in that book, and I did not expect this kind of a response. So this whole thing has basically caught me off guard. I don't really know what to make of it quite yet. I don't know why Steve Bannon would say that about the Russia investigation. It just doesn't really add up unless there's another play going on behind the scenes. You got to imagine that if Steve Bannon is running candidates in 2018 on the MAGA agenda, on the America First agenda, and then he's going to give a comment like that to somebody from, I think it's the Washington Post that's writing this book, or, obviously some shitlib who's writing this book, about how the Trump administration is treasonous and, whatever else. I can't square that circle, so I don't know. What do you make of it?
And look at Bannon's track record, too. I think people are getting tired of Bannon's shtick, right? You can only talk so much as long as you can back it up with action.
Yeah.
And people don't mind, like President Trump. He was able to back what he was saying up with action, at least in the early part of his presidency, and in his campaign, he's a very confident guy, and he was able to exude that confidence because he had been very successful in the private sector. So he had reason to be as confident and aggressive as he was, and that's fine, and nobody minds that. I guess low T whiners do mind that, but normal people don't mind an aggressive person who can back it up, talking and being alpha. But when you talk a big game and then you consistently fail to deliver results, that's when people start to question. They start to think, okay, what's going on with this guy? And it kind of wears on people's patience after a while when they hear you talk about, everything you're doing and how great it is and how awesome it is. It's like, okay, dude, stop talking and show us some results. And so far, frankly, Bannon hasn't shown us any positive results since leaving the White House. He's taken over at Breitbart, which has been okay. Breitbart has really dropped the ball opposing DACA and opposing and getting, trying to push for the wall. They do it tangentially, but they're not really talking about it. They haven't been talking as much about immigrant crime as they used to. They haven't been talking about as much about interracial crime. They used to have a segment on their website called Black Crime. They used to be pretty based when it came to these hot button and controversial issues. Well, now they're running ads for CRTV and talking about just it's morphed into a site indistinguishable from Fox News. I mean, the headlines are still bombastic. The headlines are still in your face and edgy, and the writing is still has a different tone to it. But in terms of message, they are pretty indistinguishable at this point from Fox News. Mm-hmm. And then electorally, hate to say it, but look at Bannon's track record electorally. The only Republican candidates that have won so far are people like Paul Gianforte and Karen Handel, who had nothing to do with Steve Bannon. Bannon's only race so far he's lost. So you can't be going out there and giving ammunition to the opposition party, calling the president a traitor, or saying that his son's actions were traitorous. You can't be doing all of this and then expect loyalty from the base and expect loyalty from Trump.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems about right. I think, this is obviously showing that Bannon is not a very loyal person. And you're right. I mean, I think he became more of a problem than he was worth, in the sense that he has been losing races. He hasn't come up with the money for the candidates that are going to be running in 2018. Those other candidates have not been faring well, and this Alabama thing was a complete disaster. So I imagine that this was the final straw where, Trump destroyed him. He's over. I mean, Steve Bannon, if he doesn't have access to the president, if he's not in the president's good graces, I mean, it's over for him. So right. I imagine, that's probably what it is. It's just tough because it just feels like it came out of nowhere. It feels, I don't know, it doesn't feel quite right. But I guess people have been predicting this for a long time that, Steve Bannon's not a loyal guy. He's really only about Steve Bannon, and I guess that kind of fits into this narrative, but just so shocking, But we'll see what happens. I guess it's for the better because it was getting pretty difficult defending Steve Bannon with the Zog stuff, going after Paul Nealon. And you're so right about Breitbart turning into Fox News. I mean, that used to be a network that was, like you said, pretty base, pretty populist, pretty out there. Even their Twitter, compared to Fox News and some of these others, was pretty out there. And now I'm reading articles on there about like the top 6 gay conservative icons of 2017, and every other article's about like, based women and based blacks and based gays and all this other stuff, and their fucking radio show with Paul Nealon and that whole debacle. They got, what's that guy's name, like Kareem Kassam or something from Britain doing a radio show. Really?
And he's out there shilling for Iran war too. Yeah. Yeah,
right. Yeah, that too. So, yeah, I think tentatively we're done with Steve Bannon, barring more evidence that there's something going on. I mean, this is the last straw. He's out. He's out of the movement.
What did I tell you? Like a month ago.
You were right. You were right. Tentatively, unless there's more here, and I'm always holding out.
Just start winning races. Just step out of the limelight and start winning races, dude. Like Steve Bannon wanted it all. He wanted to be the political operative and the superhero and the media personality, and he wanted all of these things at once. It's like, dude, his face is on Breitbart every day. Okay, he wanted to be the face of a movement, right? He is putting his look. He runs the Breitbart front page. We know this from people who work at Breitbart. He wanted to be the figurehead. And when you want to put yourself out there and be the figurehead, that comes with a lot more responsibility. If Bannon was working, quietly behind the scenes with candidates and campaigns, he would have a lot more room to operate here. But he's put himself out there, and working with the media like this, with these book writers and everything, he's really distanced himself on both fronts. On the one front, he's distanced himself from the president and distanced himself from ever working with Trump again, who I think is totally done with him. And then by attacking Nealon, the one guy with balls of steel who's out there fighting against Paul Ryan and doing it in a very honest way, in an honest and down to earth and really inspiring way. Saying, "Oh, he's done. He's a Nazi. He's a scary Nazi." It's like, okay, man, you put yourself on an island, and you're gonna have to live with the results.
I don't know. Maybe I'm being totally irrational right now. Maybe this is like my inner Bill Mitchell coming out, and I'm sure everybody will say that, but I feel like there's something else going on here. That's always my first instinct, because it just feels too choreographed. It feels too telegraphed. I mean, this plays exactly into the media's narrative. And people will say, maybe they called it right. Maybe all of these things are true. But I don't know. I can't buy it totally just yet. It's still the morning that this happened. But we'll monitor it going forward. We'll see what happens. But it just doesn't feel, something feels like there's something up. And maybe that's just my bad instinct that's always commanding me to be skeptical and to have kind of a conspiracy mindset, especially with Trump, or a four-dimensional chess mindset. But, tentatively, I will say I agree with you. Tentatively, if this is where it stops and Steve Bannon becomes no longer relevant and there's, no more plays, then yeah, I guess everything appears to be what it is. But it just seems, don't you get what I'm trying to say, in the sense that this plays exactly with what the media has been saying, and there's this feeding frenzy now, and all eyes are on this relationship. It feels like there's something else going on.
Possibly. I think a lot of this happens behind the scenes too, and that's why it all comes out at once. And as soon as one person makes that first move, then everybody else makes their move, because they all know what's going on. And I'm sure Trump knew about this book before we did, and this is the first I heard about it this morning. So I think the statement was probably prepared earlier, knowing that these book excerpts would be released. Like, choreographed in that sense. Yeah, and again, like I said, Steve Bannon can redeem himself. I'm not going to completely burn any. I'm not going to burn him for saying what he did about Trump. I don't really care that much. If he goes out and starts winning elections and getting good people elected, then yeah, he can redeem himself. But till that day, I'm not going to be out there rallying for old Steve.
Yeah, well, We'll see what happens. It's still early. I just, people often fall into this trap with Donald Trump where, they throw in their reaction immediately after something happens, and it always ends up backfiring. I feel like Trump is ever present, or rather ever conscious of what will be said, of what will be done, of what the reaction will be, and I think he anticipates that. So I say we got to give it a little time. And I know that's what I said about DACA too, but I think we got to watch this because it just doesn't sit well with me. This doesn't seem right. This seems a little off. That's just my feeling.
Well, if you look at it from the narrative, like if you want to use the narrative that Trump is getting absorbed by the system and is falling into the swamp, you could put all of these pieces together, all of these different pieces together, right? You can put together the DACA story and Kirsten Nielsen and Newt Gingrich coming out and saying we're going to do a deal. You can put that together with this story about Bannon, him distancing himself from Bannon, and you can put that together too then with his belligerence towards North Korea and with his stance on Iran. Because all of those things please the National Review, please the Beltway crowd. Those are all things that the Beltway likes to hear. Beltway likes to see from Trump. So if you want to, and then that pardoning of that Shlomo Goldberg or whatever the guy's name was last week. That's not even like a joke. Like his name was like Shlomo, or something. Yeah, Shlomo Rubashkin. These are all things that the Beltway obviously likes, and so Trump's been on a pretty disastrous trajectory the last week or so, last 2 weeks, I guess. And if that's the narrative you want to run with, then I guess you could square all these things together, right?
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know. I'm still skeptical, but maybe that's just irrational. But we'll see. And let the record show that I was skeptical. I have a strong feeling that this is part of a greater play. Maybe that's young and naive. I'm willing to admit that, right off the bat, but it just, I don't know. I can't wrap my head around it just yet. And I'm looking at it on Breitbart, and the headline is Trump furious. Bannon not only lost his job, he lost this big dramatic, and I can't help but feel like there's something else in the works here, because when they did part in the summer when Steve Bannon got fired, there was kind of this like nagging idea that there would be cooperation between Trump and Bannon now that he was out of the White House. That he was releasing him from the West Wing to fulfill an obligation, but, in a different capacity. I feel like that was kind of the idea when he got fired. And so now that all this stuff is happening, I don't know if that's totally real. It's hard to tell what is theater and what is real with the Trump administration. Maybe that's how he wants it, but we'll see. Tentatively, I agree with you. We're done with Bannon, but I'm always holding out that there might be some fishy play going on.
What's interesting is that Bannon and Breitbart, they, like you said, the based black conservatives, they did a whole write-up, an article today on former Sheriff David Clark, this guy who, you know who David Clark is, the guy with the cowboy hat and the goatee, who, the based black sheriff from Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. You know who that is? They did a whole write-up on Twitter temporarily suspending him from Twitter. And then this is interesting. Charlie Nash. Charlie, we know you. You know us. Charlie, he does an article here. He says, dozens of conservatives, libertarians, and liberal dissidents have been... Oh, got to include the liberals there, because the liberal dissidents have been permanently suspended from Twitter, with recent examples including Roger Stone, $1 Million Extreme, and Bunty King, this YouTuber, Bunty. In November, Twitter also de-verified numerous conservative accounts, including Laura Loomer and Tommy Robinson. Hey, Charlie. You know who else got suspended from Twitter recently? Yeah, Charlie. I think, and I think I had more followers than this Bunty guy, Goober. Also, it's interesting how they won't touch on Jared Taylor being suspended from Twitter, right? They won't touch on American Renaissance getting banned from Twitter. They won't touch on me getting banned, but they'll include, these wacky, funny liberals got banned. Oh, this is such a disaster. Oh, we need to protect the liberals, darling. This kind of like Milo tier stuff. Charlie, very disappointed. I mean, and he does call out this guy at the end saying "fuck white America" and how that's still allowed. But Charlie, whole article for David Clark. Nobody cares about David Clark, Charlie. Because the funny thing is they didn't do an article on Amran or Jared Taylor and everybody else getting suspended from Twitter. They didn't even touch that. But the based black conservative gets suspended.
Yeah,
better write an article.
Yeah, that's Breitbart for you. It's really a shame because this always happens. This happens with anybody who is like based, network, or individual who expresses these dissident viewpoints. They blow up. They get really big. They start making the money. They start getting a taste of influence or power, or a shot at being in the establishment, a shot at being in the Beltway, and rubbing shoulders with important, cool people, and going to the fancy parties and all that, and then suddenly they change their tune, right? I mean, this is everybody. This is everybody. Everybody starts out this way. Even I think Gav McInnes is a good example of that. Breitbart's a great example of that. Alex Jones, Paul Joseph Watson. Even Jasobiec, Cernovich. That's how it goes.
Yeah, PJW is a great example of that. You can find his old videos of him talking about Israeli aggression in the Middle East and the Union Plan and all this stuff. Like you can find he used to do old videos talking about that. It's great, informative stuff. But now he's totally flipped and he's totally, repeating the mainstream narratives on this stuff.
Even Alex Jones, who was talking about in the mid-2000s about how Bibi Netanyahu comes to the Congress and they give him 60-some standing ovations and all the Israeli money that's being pumped into the State Department. And without fail, everybody who is on the rise, who's talking about these dissident issues, when they're nobodies, they can say this. And then suddenly they get a taste of whatever it is, or I don't know, maybe they get a threat. Maybe somebody calls them up on the phone and gives them some kind of a warning, and then they turn. And that's what happened to Breitbart. That's what happened to all these guys. Even Milo. Remember Milo when he was on Rubin Report? I think in 2015. That was his first major spot. He was talking about how Jews control the media and how they control the banks. Dave Rubin was like, you said the Jews control the media, and Milo was like, yeah, but of course they do. And you wouldn't, not in 10 years would you hear him say anything like that. Now, he's down there in Australia talking about Islam and, all this other stuff. He was doing the Roman salute with Richard Spencer in 2015. But then he got the Mercer money. He got Steve Bannon, who is connected to Donald Trump, and they get a little taste. That's why we need the new Caesars who will shirk, they will shun the money, the influence in favor of what's right. But that's, that appears to be what happened with Bannon and Breitbart. We'll see. Again, I still hold out that with Breitbart and Bannon in particular, there is that a lot more to lose in the sense that they need money to run people in campaigns, and obviously this throws a wrench into it. But we'll see. I'm hearing initially from some of my pals that a lot of the interviews in this book were bullshit. I'm hearing, because I'm just looking around on Twitter and what people are saying. And a lot of people that were interviewed for this book say that they either weren't interviewed, or the quotes that were taken out of context, or they were made up, or the author took liberties. And that's obviously very premature, but I don't know if that quote wasn't legit, and if Trump's response was in response to something that wasn't legit. I don't know. But a little early to tell. We'll keep an eye on it.
Well, yeah, and that's what makes me think that there's probably something that went down behind the scenes,
right.
to facilitate this, because you wouldn't see Trump unload like this if it weren't for long-standing grievances between the two of them.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He had that statement locked and loaded, and that was scathing. That wasn't like his usual, which is like fake news. Goofy this, goober that. He went for the jugular on Steve Bannon. That was scathing.
Scorched earth.
Yeah, so that was obviously, he heard some comment and then, nuclear on Steve Bannon, bigger button on Steve Bannon. So you're right, probably something going on behind the scenes.
Right. Yeah, I love the new narrative on this too from people like Jack Posobiec, who's saying the entire media has given Steve Bannon's alleged quotes 100 times more coverage than the massive uprisings in Iran. It's like, okay, that's clearly false.
Yeah, I've been hearing about Iran all week, but don't let that get in the way of your narrative. Well, their whole ideology is do the opposite of what the media does. They don't care about the Zionists. They don't care about any other actors. It's only like this MAGA-peed, like, do the opposite of what the fake news media does, And also the anti-Muslim thing comes into play. I mean, these are goobers, dude. They just don't know what's going on here. They see Muslims as the biggest problem in the Middle East, and that should tell you something.
Right. Yep, and now we'll get into Iran here in a second, but we're seeing it. Jazz Hands predicted that we would be seeing the Iranian dissidents and with perfect English coming out and saying that, I'm standing against oppression and standing against the protests in Iran. Here we go. Or standing for the protesters in Iran. It's so brave. Here we go. The video that Goofy Jack retweeted. It says it's this nice, well-made video of this girl in Iran with her headscarf off. I am against the veil. Here she is taking it off, and they're taking the veils off. And wow, these people are just peaceful. Great people who we should definitely send 6,000 of our soldiers to die for. Dumb stuff. I could say a lot about the Iran thing. Let's save that for the next hour, and we'll get into that next hour. If you have not signed up for the paywall, we'll be doing the mailbag next hour. So this is the last month we're going to be doing the Patreon mailbag. So if you want to get in on the Patreon mailbag, jump in and sign up for that on patreon.com/America First Media. After January, we'll be switching to doing it all through the amfirstmedia.com. So Patreon is going to be, we're going to be winding it down here and start doing the paywall, or start doing the mailbag on the First Media site. So if you have not gotten your mailbag in, you want to get a question in on the mailbag, you can do that. Sign up for one last month of the mailbag, and you'll get in on the next show. Of course, I keep forgetting that we're not doing a live show. I always revert back to the live show mindset. But yeah, we'll be back after the break, talking Iran, talking North Korea, answering your questions. Right, coming up ahead next. Welcome back, everybody. Hour 2 here of Nationalist Review, episode 26. If you have not already, go on over and check out amfirstmedia.com, amfirstmedia.com. We got merch, we got articles, we got this episode is going to be posted there. Everything you could ever want from us and more over there at amfirstmedia.com. And the shop is amfirstmedia.com/shop. So now let's break back to the action here. During the break, I was looking into this plane situation going on in Atlanta. This plane that had to return 2 times, left the airport, came back, a new plane left the airport, came back, weird stuff. But the most read article, or one of the most read articles on the Atlanta Journal-Constitution website, AJC.com, was this one that caught my eye. So we're gonna do a quick Diversity Report 2049, a look at America's white minority future. This is a story by Reza Habersham. No relation to Marcus Halberstram. Alleged kidnappers caught sleeping in car days after robbing and forcing victim to strip. This is Kenneth Lewis and Dwayne Holt were arrested in connection with a kidnapping and armed robbery in southwest Atlanta. 2 accused kidnappers were arrested, and a 3rd suspect is on the run, and after the victim led Atlanta police to a car where the suspects were found sleeping. The victim was not a woman, which may surprise you. Antonio Clark spotted the blue Hyundai Sonata in the 200 block of Cleveland Avenue on Tuesday. Atlanta police said it was the same car he was forced into at gunpoint just days ago. Police went to the car and found Dwayne Holt, Kenneth Lewis, and James Davis asleep with the engine off. They were taken to Fulton County Jail, where they were remain on aggravated assault, kidnapping, and armed robbery charges. Police said that the victim was forced out of the car as another man, who Clark said appeared out of nowhere, ordered him to strip. According to a police report, he was down to a sweater and torn boxers when the man made off with his blue jeans, a pair of multicolored Nike shoes, his wallet, $350 cash, and a cell phone. So I'm ready for New America, where getting Getting attacked at a gas station for your Nike shoes and your blue jeans is the law of the land.
I think it's vibrant. I think it's vibrant and colorful and exciting.
It certainly is colorful.
Yeah. I mean, look, isn't it kind of boring when your kids go to safe schools, your kids go to safe white schools, and you live in a safe white, insufferably white neighborhood where, everybody's polite and friendly and there's good service and not a lot of crime. We got to spice it up. We need a little pizzazz, a little urban spice. I want a favela. I want to live in a favela where it's gritty and it's rich, where there's street bands and gypsies taking your money and other people taking your money and crime, and you got to be on your toes and you got to constantly be aware. So I am genuinely excited. I think this is going to be fun. I think it's going to be a global, international experience. I can't wait to be a citizen of the world. I'm excited.
Yeah, no, everything will be better once we shed ourselves of these ideas of safety and societies that make sense and people getting along. Those are just vestiges. Those are the last remnants of a white supremacist, evil mindset. And the idea that you should be able to get gas at a gas station without being forced at gunpoint to hand over your sweater and hand over your multicolored Nikes and your wallet, that's a white supremacist idea. And if you believe that, you're a white supremacist who deserves to be banned from Twitter and have your bank account shut down and be banned from PayPal and be forced to live a life of solitude. No one should ever have to deal with you and your evil white supremacist ideas.
Yeah.
So this is going to be beautiful.
I'm excited. I can't wait. I have fully embraced diversity. I cannot wait for all the immigrants to come over, and it'll be a good day. There will be spice in our white lives, in our goofy white lives. We'll finally have spicy food, good dancing, and an assload of crime and rape, and
child murder. There's another story here. A Florida man has been charged with murder after allegedly beating his son to death. Multiple reports say the man made the boy's brother sleep beside the dead body. Jack Jr. Montgomery, and he's got a nice little afro here, is charged with felony first-degree murder, Hillsborough County Police said. Deputies wrote Montgomery, deputies said he punished the child for sneaking out of bed for a cookie. Police say Montgomery's physical attacks caused the boy's brain to bleed and his death. So, yeah, this is in America 2049 the appropriate way to discipline children is you just beat their fucking brains in, right? Incidentally, that's also how we spread democracy to the Middle East. But this is how you do it. Great. We learn so many things from beautiful other cultures, don't we? We learn so many cool tips and tricks on parenting from these beautiful third world cultures. I can't wait.
We've been thoroughly enriched. I can't wait. Can't wait for our, it's equal, James. It's equal, and we have to have it. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and the real, we won't be seeing the benefits of this diversity firsthand yet, but when we send our kids off to daycare or something, and they're in the daycare, and they're one of two white kids surrounded by 9 or 10 Somali kids, and they're just getting their heads kicked in by the 10-year-old Somalis, as infants, and the Somali caretaker's just sitting there laughing, recording it, and posting it on her Facebook and having a good laugh. That's when we'll really feel the benefits. Diversity will be coming home to roost for us, and frankly, we deserve it for colonialism and oppression.
You're right. We do. We deserve this. This is our just desserts, James, for all the suffering we've caused for for Jim Crow.
Depending who you talk to, diversity is either beautiful and vibrant, and then when you mention the negatives of diversity, it's punishment for the sins of our ancestors. So, that's the cool thing about the world, the Orwellian clown world we live in, where diversity is both a gift and a bounty and a reward, but it's also, fucking chattel for a legacy of mistreating the other. So great stuff. Well, speaking of blowing children's brains apart, which is something that we don't condone, of course. It's something that apparently the new right condones. because, we need to spread democracy, right? And we need to really impart our legacy of democracy. And we're so good. America's so good at spreading democracy to the Middle East that I think we need to do it again, and we need to do it in Iran. Right? The Iranian people, they're all rising up organically, and they really just want to be free and liberated, and we need to spread democracy to them. So it's time to just start unloading the white phosphorus, rain down democracy on them, and that'll really be what they want. That'll really leave a positive legacy for America in the Middle East, won't it?
I agree. I like this.
I think we had the right idea in 1988 when we shot down a clearly marked Iranian civilian plane with 290 civilians on board and 66 children. When we, splattered their brain tissue across the desert, I think that was really a good moment for America. So, more of that. Or when we pay for Israeli white phosphorus to burn children alive in Palestine. That's a really cool thing we do. And, people just hate us for our freedoms. They don't hate us for the fact that, we gave generations of Iraqis birth defects for using, chemical weapons in Iraq. They don't object to that. They just really hate us for our freedoms. Isn't that right?
I agree with this. I agree with everything that's been said. Oh, yeah. Iran, the latest victim of the Bannon plan, the latest victim of securing the greater realm of Israel. It's going to be a good one. No, but I don't, in all seriousness, I don't believe there's going to be war, if that's what you're hinting at.
Well, I don't think there will be either. I think they're not doing enough to push it right now. And unless this is the kind of thing where, I hate to say it, but I could see, some type of incident happen in the U.S., some type of terror incident happen in the next month or so in the U.S., and for, very clear as day, brand new Iranian passports to be found on the perpetrator. Mm-hmm. If you catch my drift. Like this is, we've seen this happen before, have we not?
We have seen this. But, you got to consider that a war in Iran, you got to consider exactly what that would entail. That would entail, this is estimated by people who are familiar with the situation, between 200 and 250,000 ground troops at the least, cost a minimum of about $1 trillion. It would be a long and bloody occupation. We're talking about the worst kind of terrain to fight a war, which is desert and mountain. In order of worst terrain is first desert, second mountain, third great rivers, and it's the whole country is desert and mountain. So I think people, when they talk about Trump going to war in Iran, they have to really consider first what that would entail, and then why he would engage in such a war. If you look at exactly how bloody this would be, how expensive it would be, what an operation we're talking about. This is not like Iraq. This is not like 1991. This is not like 2003. This is not like Afghanistan in 2001. This is one of the major countries in the Middle East. A lot of people aren't aware of this, but Iran, Egypt, and Turkey, those are the only real nations in the Middle East. Those are the most populous, biggest economy, most significant armed forces. Every other country is...
Don't forget Israel.
Oh, yeah, and Israel. The rest are tribes with flags. So Afghanistan, easy. Well, not easy, but, you know what I'm saying. To invade wasn't a challenge. To topple Saddam wasn't a challenge. The Iranian military is twice as big as Iraq's. And so you fathom, what we're up against here and, why Trump would do that. I don't think you could find a motivation for that.
Well... spreading democracy is a good motivation. I agree. I think a full-scale invasion is highly unlikely. But we have seen the United States engage in foreign policy that has been, however, equally as disastrous. Perhaps not in terms of lives lost, but in terms of the impact on the region. We can look at Libya as a fantastic example of our legacy of failure and really destruction in the Middle East. When we went into Libya to depose Gaddafi, Gaddafi was a guy who spent his entire career fighting against the extremes in Libyan politics. He was a centrist who fought against the hardline Islamic radicals and the clerics. He kept them at bay. He was actually fighting a civil war against Islamic radicals in his own country when the United States decided to invade and topple Gaddafi. He was one of only a few countries that did not owe money to the central banks. And that had a lot of oil reserves in the country of Libya. And I actually last year I was actually working with a couple people from Libya, and I was talking to them about their country, and they were telling me that under Gaddafi, things weren't great. You could still, it was clearly like an oppressive country, right? You would still be punished for being a political dissident, but there was water, there were schools, there was public transportation, there were roads, people were economically secure. People were not going hungry to the same extent that they were now. And because we remember, after we decided to intervene in Libya, ISIS took control of the country. ISIS and other radicals all claimed their slice of the pie in Libya. And I was talking to these Libyan guys, and they were saying that, yeah, we thought it was bad under Gaddafi, but holy crap, it's a hellhole now under ISIS. And they, these are people who had kids. It's like, yeah, we're not. They told me they would love to go back to Libya, but with ISIS, controlling the country, it's like, I'm not going to go back with ISIS there. And that is an example of our failure in Libya, and Libya still hasn't recovered. We can look at Syria too. We're trying to, we were on the path to try to topple Syria and Assad for allegedly using chemical weapons, even though he didn't. And even if he did, he would be gassing ISIS. So I don't really care. Use all the chemical weapons you want, Bashar. Keep it coming. But, they're trying to topple Assad. But again, we have to remember, he's fighting ISIS. His number one enemy in the region is ISIS. And it's very telling that, certain ambassadors from certain countries are coming out and saying that it's preferable for Al-Qaeda to control Syria than Bashar al-Assad. We have to really think about what we're doing here when we intervene in these foreign countries and whose interests we're serving. Are we serving American geopolitical interests? Are we serving American national security to be toppling regimes and putting them in the hands of Islamic radicals? These people are not perfect. These dictators are not perfect, but they're fighting against Islamic radicals and they're fighting against terrorism.
Yeah,
that would hurt us. Hezbollah, say all you want about Hezbollah, but they don't want to hurt the United States. Hezbollah does not want to fight the U.S. So when we hear about Iranian funding of terror, they're funding Hezbollah, and Hezbollah, never attacked the U.S. on U.S. soil. So
yeah, I don't think anyone disagrees with the fact that we shouldn't have war in Iran. I just don't think it's going to happen. Whether or not KSA and Israel might be up to something right now is an entirely other matter. I think there are definitely fingerprints on these protests, either by the CIA or by Saudi Arabia or by Israel. And you look at the nature of the protests that are happening right now, and in every city, it's been less than 1,000 people. People compare it to the 2009 Green Movement, the 2009 Green Revolution, when you had 1 million protesters in Tehran protesting the fraudulent election, obvious voter fraud by the supreme leader of Iran to get Ahmadinejad in office. In this protest, there's no catalyst for it. It was all of a sudden in response to nothing, in response to the prices of eggs rising. I'm sorry, that doesn't count as a catalyst. Then It spread, according to quote-unquote anti-government protests. And it's less than 1,000 people in any of the given cities, and they're saying it's the biggest one since 2009. Well, kind of, but not in the same way. And you got to imagine, if this is a protest with no catalyst, with no leadership, they don't have these massive numbers. The chants that they're chanting, the protesters in the streets that you hear in all the news, in all the newspapers, is no Lebanon, no Syria, no Gaza, I will die for Iran. And basically echoing the foreign policy sentiments of Israel and Saudi Arabia, which is get Iran out of their client states, get Iran out of these countries bordering Israel and Saudi Arabia. And so you just look at all these different elements, and it's so obviously astroturfed, but do I think this is going to present a challenge to the regime? Probably not. Will Trump intervene and in some capacity? Perhaps. Will there be a ground invasion? I don't think so. So I think the president is still ideologically opposed to regime change. I don't think regime change will happen in the near future, but you just look at what's going on the ground, and it's clear what this is about. It's obviously to undermine the credibility of Iran. It's obviously a play by Saudi Arabia, in my opinion, Mohammed bin Salman, as a counter to Iran, because you see the same things in Bahrain, in Qatar, in Yemen, which is Iranian-backed Shiite militants or protesters or revolutionaries causing uprisings. Even in the eastern province of Saudi Arabia, the oil-rich eastern province, which is predominantly Shiite, you've seen protests inspired by the Iranians there as well. So this is just a continuation of the Saudi-Iranian rivalry. It's another tool in Mohammed bin Salman's toolkit. I'm sure President Trump is using this. To some extent, he may be involved, but I don't think regime change is the play here, at least not yet.
Right, and that's the thing is it really determines, and really this hinges on how much those forces that want regime change, how much they're going to push it and how far they're willing to go. Because you can easily see, and we know the intelligence agencies involved here. We know the intelligence agencies of the different countries involved in, these type of activities, and we know who they are. You know who they are. We know who they are. And we've seen them do false flags in the past. We've seen them do, horrific false flags. We saw with what was the plan to blow up to kill the Americans in Egypt?
It was the Ababziar plot in D.C.
Okay, yeah, but what was the other one in Egypt to blow up?
Oh, in Egypt. Oh, the Levant affair. I thought you were talking about
Iran. Right. Yeah, no, we've seen with the Levant affair, like we know these people are willing to do false flags. They're willing to kill Americans to sway American public opinion, and I just hope that doesn't happen. I don't think the ground is ripe in America for another war. I don't think we're ready for another war. I think it would be very unfortunate for Trump's base, for the American right to fall into this trap that is clearly being laid for them. I mean, the trap is so straightforward that the media is laying, and that these new right, counterculture type people like Paul Joseph Watson are laying. They're saying that this is a great opportunity for President Trump to show, he's a strong leader, and to show that he's not going to put up with the oppression of people like Obama did. I'm forgetting who it was. Stephen Miller over at Fox News says that, overseeing the fall of an oppressive hardline Iranian regime that sponsors terror all around the globe, followed by the rise of a democratic Iran not interested in aggression against its neighbors, would be a foreign policy victory for President Trump, one of the biggest for a president since the fall of the Berlin Wall. End quote. So that's the play that the globalists are making. They're trying to convince the Trump base, trying to convince Trump that invasion of Iran, or not necessarily invasion, but supporting the overthrow of the government of Iran would be a victory for him because it would show strength. It would be a sign of strength. And I really hope that Trump is able to resist the temptation to get into what boils down to a dick measuring contest with Barack Obama on this issue. Because we have our own domestic problems to address. We have problems in our own borders that need to be taken care of. We don't have the time or the energy or the money or the global standing right now to get involved with another international conflict. And by the way, if we were to somehow incentivize rebellion in Iran, if we were to somehow incentivize, even if we don't get involved with ground troops, if we are to start backing rebel groups in Iran, we're now on the hook for all the refugees, guys. We saw this with Syria. We saw this with Libya. We're on the hook for taking all of the refugees that come out of these places that we destabilize, and we don't want that for sure. Iranians are, much better than a lot of these other people, but still, we don't need any more people here.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the Trump approach so far has been kind of counterintuitive in the sense that, or at least people analyzing it, I think it's counterintuitive what it's actually intended to do, which is to say that when Trump goes out there and he expresses support for the protesters, that does not have the effect that people think it does. That does not help the protesters, especially in a country like Iran, where Trump banned all Iranians from coming into the United States earlier in the year. He banned students from studying from Iran in the United States, which is very unpopular among the young people in Iran. And Iran is a young country. All the protests in 99, in 2002, and 2003 were student protests. So I think for people saying that this is Trump showing his support for it, this hurts the protesters. And this has been well known in Iran for a long time, that if the United States supports the protesters, it actually has the opposite effect, because Iranians, they view America as trying to stir up trouble. And if the Iranian president and the Iranian supreme leader are blaming their enemies on the protests, and Donald Trump comes out and expresses support for them, it kind of gives that a little bit of credibility. I don't know if that's entering Trump's calculus, but it'd be hard to imagine that somebody didn't tell him that, in his National Security Council or whatever. But Yeah, I think that something is definitely fishy here. We know who the usual actors are gunning for: the war hawks, the military-industrial complex, Israel, KSA. I mean, they are gunning for the Iranian regime. I think it might have something more to do with the Iranian nuclear program, though, because if you look, there was like this secret meeting that happened a couple of days ago, or a phone call between Bibi Netanyahu and Donald Trump, where they drew up documents basically on how they were going to address Iran moving forward. And in those documents, there was a tacit approval of the Iran nuclear deal. There was a tacit confirmation that they were willing to move forward with that. And then on top of that, they had a deal on December 28th, I believe, when they said they were going to work together, combating Iran in various ways on the ground. And so you look at some of the other things that have been going on. I think it might be something to do with the Iran nuclear deal, which Donald Trump decertified back in October. Maybe this is to get leverage, because if you imagine that the protesters are out there saying, we are poor and you're spending our money elsewhere. We're poor and you're spending our money on these foreign adventures and everything else. And the Iranian government has to give concessions, or they have to make the appearance that they are, to quell these protests, which are so widespread, and there's not many of them, but they are in so many different places. Does that create pressure for the Iranian regime to make concessions to stop the missile tests, to stop violating the spirit of the nuclear deal? Is that the art of the deal, one might ask? I think we have to look, the angle of everybody else is pretty static and pretty predictable. Israel, KSA, Deep State, we know what their angle is. But I think Trump's angle is a little bit different. I think that might be the key, is the nuclear deal.
Well, I think we'll just have different opinions on that. I mean, you're right, but in terms of Iran having a missile, I certainly understand their motivations for wanting one.
Yeah,
and I certainly understand. I think it would actually probably be a good thing for us if Iran were to be nuclear armed, because they would be able to deter a lot of the aggression in that region that we've seen. Iran is not determined to build a caliphate. Iran does not want to build an empire. They're not trying to do a Deus Vult situation and rebuild the Persian Empire. Iran is interested. They have negative GDP some years. Like this is a country that is trying to get itself on a sure footing economically before engaging in some kind of a war effort.
Dude, one of their goals is regional hegemony. I mean, yeah, the nuclear.
That's fine. I would rather have them as regional hegemon than some of the other countries in the region.
Oh boy, see, this is the Iran thing again. This is the Iran debate. Where I understand why
certainly
Iran,
better than Israel. I mean, right?
Israel doesn't have regional hegemony. Israel exercises influence over the United States, who has regional hegemony through its proxies. But, I mean, Israel's not calling the shots in Riyadh or in Baghdad. I mean, indirectly, they may be. But Iranian hegemony would be a different animal altogether. I'd rather have American proxies in control than Iran, wouldn't you? I mean, Iran with nuclear weapons, what happens if those weapons fall into the wrong hands? What if that triggers a nuclear war? Do we want more unstable regimes with nuclear weapons? I understand why they want them, but I mean, Libya wanted them, and we negotiated with them down until Barack Obama decided that he wanted to depose Gaddafi for the deep state. Syria negotiated down from a nuclear weapons program after 2003. So, I mean, Saudi Arabia could get nuclear weapons from Pakistan. They have a very good relationship with Pakistan. They could get them if they wanted them. If Iran got nuclear weapons, Saudi Arabia gets them. Emirates might get them. Egypt will reconsider. Turkey will absolutely consider. Do we want a nuclear-armed Middle East? I understand Israel triggered it, but, you can't exactly take that back. Do we want to move in the direction towards proliferation, or, do we want to stall it? I think we want to stall it.
I just don't think it should be our main foreign policy priority, is stopping Iranian proliferation. Because, like you mentioned, I mean, Israel has anywhere from 18 to 100 nuclear warheads that were, of course, built from stolen American technology. So having a mutually assured destruction situation in the Middle East may be beneficial to us, and it may deter some of the aggression that we have seen from Israel to Iran and from Iran towards Israel. I mean, we have seen these countries picking at each other for decades and decades and decades. Some could say for millennia, but recently under the current regimes, there have been these proxy battles with Iran funding Hezbollah to attack Israel, and then Israel assassinating Iranian civilians. Like, you would see all of this calm down if there was an understanding that, you know, both of these countries are nuclear armed. This is the whole theory behind mutually assured destruction and why it works on a global scale, right? Is that if you know your enemy can respond with overwhelming force, you're not going to engage in something that may escalate. You're not going to provoke something that then may escalate. It has worked with the U.S. and Russia and China and every other country for a long time now. So I think that it actually may be a beneficial development for the Middle East to have a counterbalance to Israeli nuclear power in the region. It may quell things quite a bit. I'll have to wait and see, though. I just don't think it's our number one concern. I think of bigger concern to us is a regime that has actually indicated they're willing to threaten us and willing to use nuclear weapons against us, and that is, of course, the North Koreans. Right. And to swing back to Iran just momentarily, I'm not saying that we should like help Iran get the bomb or that we should encourage them to get the bomb. I'm just pointing out that, you know, even if Iran were to get the bomb, it may result in there may be a silver lining to that for the US, and there may be a silver lining to that for the region. So, you know, it's not entirely something that we need to be actively, you know, dedicating all of our resources to preventing. I think that North Korea should certainly be on the front burner for us. And maybe that's just because, you know, West Coast bias over here. Seattle's the first city getting nuked if North Korea gets the bomb. So that's all we got on foreign policy stuff. The Iran and North Korea stories, we'll have to wait and see how those develop. Those are more examples of those stories that just continue to develop on a week-by-week basis. But hopefully this Iran thing will be dying down soon. I am seeing now that the president, Rouhani, is predicting the protests will be over by next week. So hopefully that comes to an end, so we stop having to wait on pins and needles to see whether America is going to be jumping in and intervening in some way, because I really hope we don't. So now let's go to the mailbag. If you are not part of the mailbag, you can go over to patreon.com/AmericaFirstMedia and join in. You'll be part of the mailbag next time for the next episode. Like I mentioned, we'll be switching everything over. We're switching the Patreon over to a paywall that we do on our own site on amfirstmedia.com. That'll be switched over at some point in the next month. So stay tuned for that. It'll be very exciting. No more money to Patreon, to the commies over there, and it'll be costing less for our people on the $15 a month plan. We'll be bringing your rate down, so saving you money and keeping it all in-house. So a great deal for everybody. Sam Rhodes asks, what is the difference between an Israel First American like Jacob Wall and a traitor?
There's no difference. There is no difference between the two.
Right. If you're an American, you know, America should be first. American interest should come first for all Americans. And I don't understand why people think it's okay to put, you know, the interests of foreign nations over the interests of America. It really does make you think. Tyler asks, what is your workout routine for me? Well, tell you what, I haven't been lifting the past week or so because I've been out of town traveling, going from you know, family gathering to family gathering. But I'll tell you, the best thing that I've found, what I'm going to be doing, and you'll see the results, because come springtime, there will be some physique pics posted around the internet. I'm committing myself to that. What I found to be very successful in the past is low carb, in fact, ketogenic diet. So you're eating no carbs, and then you're combining that with a bro split type of workout. So you're doing hypertrophy. You're doing anywhere from 8 to 16 rep range. You know, none of the strength stuff, because you're not gonna have the strength when you're on keto. You're not gonna have the carbs. So keep everything in a relatively high rep range. Keep it low carb for the diet, and then train. You know, try to train 5 times a week. A couple of those can have cardio before or after. I prefer cardio after to keep energy up, but yeah, you know, twice a week cardio and lift 5 times a week and have a good diet. That's pretty much all you need to know. No step on snack asks, PC Master Race or console peasant? Nick, I know your answer.
Yeah, well, I have to go for the console. It's what I was raised on. I was never a PC fag, so I can't give the PC the endorsement. I like the console.
You know, I was never a PC gamer either until about a week ago when I became a PC gamer after building this I don't know what are we gonna call this, the Great White Warrior down here. I don't know. This thing is like 2 feet tall, like a foot wide, 3 feet deep. This is a huge a huge PC case. Has the LED on the RAM. Nick, this is like full autismo here. The LED light up RAM, the light up fans. It's very cool. It's very cool. It's got the i7. I only have 16 gigs of RAM in there right now. I'm about to add some more. I just installed the graphics card last night, like I mentioned at the start of the show. So I have the wraparound monitors now. It's very 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 cool stuff. Big fan. So I got Grand Theft Auto 5 installed, so I'm gonna test that out here on the PC and see how it works out. I got the $10 like Walmart Xbox controller because I hate playing with keyboard for like FPS games and stuff like that, and third-person shooters. I love the tactile feel of the controller, so gonna test that out a little bit later on. Console just doesn't cut it, because you're buying a console every couple of years, right? And you're paying a lot more for the games. You can get the games on PC on the Steam sale. You get the games for cheaper. The exclusives aren't even that good anymore. I guess the only good exclusive was Destiny, but now Destiny is not even console exclusive anymore. So yeah, not a lot keeping you on the console. I guess the advantage of it is that you can use it for like TV, like Netflix and stuff, but you can do that with a smart TV or with a Roku now too. So diminishing returns. Dave asks, where do you guys stand on genetic engineering or designer babies? Is it possible to reconcile this technology with traditional Christian belief systems in the U.S.? My concern is if China develops this before we come to terms with it, we could become Neanderthals in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, me personally, I think that I haven't considered the ethics of it too. People fucking always ask me this. I don't know what the hell. I've never looked into this subject at all. But that's the only angle. I mean, that's the angle that I think cannot be ignored, which is competition. I mean, think about really anything with these next generation technologies like AI, the designer baby, some of these other things. It's not so much a question of, do you think it'll be good? Do you think it'll be ethical? But, I mean, how can you compete with China if they're going to have advanced AI, if they're going to have, they're going to be making the master race with designer babies. So I don't even think we have a choice so much unless, there was some kind of supranational action on that. But I haven't really looked into the ethical question too much.
Yeah, I would just say that on its face, I don't mind it. I don't mind that sort of technology that can improve lives and can improve quality of life. And, we're able now to eliminate things like Down syndrome, which cause a lot of suffering for people. We're able to use medical technology now to eliminate things like that. And I think that is a great thing for our country and for humanity, is that we can eliminate these diseases that cause people a lot of suffering in their lives and a lot of pain and a lot of stress and strain for their families too. People love their kids who have these diseases. That's fine. That's fine. But it's certainly a large cost for the families too to have kids who have horrible diseases. So I think it's a good thing that we can now use technology to put an end to some of these diseases. And Down syndrome is like the most mild of them too. I mean, there are horrific genetic diseases that we can now pretty much eliminate through medical technology. So is that unethical? Is that against medical ethics? Is that against Christian ethics? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know what the philosophical stance on that topic is, but I don't see how you could say something like that does improve people's lives is unethical. Then when it comes to designer babies, not something I would partake in, but if there were a way to guarantee that your kids would be like that, if you're gonna have a boy and you can guarantee your son is going to be between 5'11" and 6'3", would you do it? Probably would do that.
Right.
Because of the advantages it poses in their life.
That's just the issue is where does it stop? Where does it end? I mean, that's where it becomes, I think, more of a difficult. It's not such an easy calculation. I mean, I think anybody could get around curing diseases preemptively. I don't know exactly what the church would say about that, but I think there's a stronger case to make for that. But the question then becomes, right? I mean, do you make these enhancements, and then where does it end? Where does our interference in these natural processes end? And then you look at all the other research that's being done and stem cell stuff and growing human organs and like pigs and stuff. I mean, it really comes to a point where we have to decide, at what point do we halt the technological progress? Do we halt it at all? I mean, well, should we keep going and see what we're going to find on the other side? I don't know. I don't think we're going to like it, but we'll see.
Well, I think it becomes less of an issue if you have a culture that is not that knows what is moral and what isn't, right? If you have a culture that knows, okay, it's immoral for me to get, for example, like a pig head like transplanted onto mine, or like like that guy who got tiger whiskers and claws like implanted on his body. It's like, that's wrong and immoral and unnatural. You can have then the scientific advancements without the cultural degeneracy and the negative impacts on society. And you can avoid, you can ward off ending up like Blade Runner society if you have a moral civilization. I would hope. I don't know. We haven't tested that before. We've never encountered this as a civilization yet. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I also think a lot of these fears are kind of overblown, and that just the barriers to entry for this kind of technology is going to be so high that we're not going to see tomorrow like Schwarzenegger-esque transformer, transhumanist, people roaming the streets. Like it's going to be something that there's such a high barrier to entry for that. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a mainstream, widespread issue. Possibly though, with the Chinese government, people getting behind it, you could see that. I don't know. Doesn't worry. Doesn't keep me up at night. I'll just say that. George says, as a fellow fan of acceleration, I don't see why you think amnesty is forever. Although I'd like to, there's no need to go full siege to revoke the citizenship of amnesty recipients and anchor babies. Why so black-pilled on it? Well, George, hate to break it to you, but you're factually wrong on that statement there. Because the only way that citizenship can be revoked, there are two ways. One is treason. If someone commits treason against the United States, they're convicted of treason, then they can have their citizenship revoked. Number two is if they're found to have lied during their citizenship application process. And again, that requires that has to be proven in a court of law. So you can't just say, okay, we're going to strip citizenship from everybody who came here after 1980. Sorry, you're all going back. You just can't do that constitutionally. And you would see, like, you think the courts intervening against Trump are bad now, you would see every court in America come out and stop that from happening. So there's just no way for that to be done, no way for that to be enforced. It's unconstitutional. It's against our law to do that. So amnesty is forever, right? Amnesty, we can try to justify to ourselves why it's not, but the fact is that amnesty is forever, and that is why it's so important to take this seriously.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, that's why you take it seriously. Obviously, I disagree about, if there should be deals made, but you can't undersell, or you can't understate rather, what the consequences would be, which would be permanent. I mean, there won't be revocations of citizenship anytime soon if you give that. So,
Big Al says, when can we look forward to a Hearts of Iron, America vs. Hearts of Iron match? Well, we gotta wean Nick off of Minecraft first.
Yeah, I've never played Hearts of Iron.
I downloaded it and tried to run it on my old PC. Way too resource intensive. Could not run it on my old computer. So I'll try it out on the new battle station I got here. I'll try to run it. It'll run fine. But it's a hard game to learn because you got to manage resource production in each territory, and military technology and invasion and military strategy. Very in depth. I think it is turn based. It's not RTS. No, it is RTS too, and that makes it even more complex. It's the fact that it's RTS. Only RTS I've played recently is what's that one called? Rise of Nations. That's a good RTS. Need to learn Hearts of Iron, then we can do a match. We should do a Civ match though. That'd be fun.
Yeah. We're doing one with the Discord fellas right now. It's getting pretty intense.
What nation are you playing?
I am playing as Germany, of course.
The good nation to play as is you play as the Vikings. I forget what country they are, but the guys who have the Viking units. I haven't played Civ in a year, so I'm not really well versed on it. But they're great because you can move from, if you're playing an archipelago map or some map with a lot of water, you can move from land to sea and from sea to land without without taking an extra turn, so you just do it instantly. Great for bringing in armies and attacking those little cities. Question, Nick, do you keep the cities or do you raise them?
I keep the cities. Well, it depends. It depends on the city. Some of them I keep, some of them I raise. You know, some of them are very good. Some of them, because some of them are just a burden. Some of them are a burden with unhappiness and even with money sometimes. And if it's especially if it's a low-level city, it doesn't take long to raise. But in a lot of cases, they're strategically beneficial, in terms of if you get later in the game, you could put stealth bombers there, you could put nukes there. Good forward base of operations, but I mean, if you're talking about like in the countryside of like way out of the way, then you fucking burn them to the ground. And it also depends on what stage you're in the game.
Right. Yeah, once you reach kind of the late stages of the game, you don't need as many cities, and you don't need to be churning out as many units and everything because you've built all your workers and everything that you need, and they're less productive. I didn't realize the unhappiness quotient and how much the cities drag down your unhappiness and how they drag down your science production too. It takes longer to produce science technologies for every city you have. And I was playing it like I was playing Rise of Nations. In Rise of Nations, you're incentivized to build more cities because the more cities you have, the more caravans you can have, and the more trade routes and resource production centers you can have. So you're incentivized to build as many cities as possible. I think StarCraft is the same way. And so I was playing with that mindset for Civ, and I didn't realize how much that was hampering me. So I had to change that strategy pretty quick.
Yeah. No, that's I never realized that until later on when I started playing Civ, because with Civ, the unhappiness, it brings down your production, it brings down your population growth, it brings down your everything. And I for a long time I played like, who cares if they're not happy, but I mean that'll really hurt you. So yeah, that is and that's, I think it's kind of nice because it prevents that kind of rapid expansion that that's kind of the instinct, and that gives a big advantage, but it provides balance for the game, which I like.
The true challenge is to play as Venice, right? Who can't build any cities.
I don't play as Venice. I don't have any of the DLC. So when people start talking about that, I don't know.
Well, sorry, I'm can't dumb myself down to that level of plebeian to have this conversation.
The Virgin no DLC versus the Chad DLC.
Yeah, well, the DLC is like $10 now. Like it's not that expensive.
I just don't want to learn a whole new game. They incorporate like religion and spies. It's like, I like the game I've been playing. I have Civ 6. I've never played it because I'm just comfortable with Civ 5. I just want to play Civ 5.
So basic Civ 5 doesn't have religion?
No.
Oh, dude, that sucks.
What does religion do anyway, huh?
Well, I'm surprised you don't have this DLC now for the religion. So you create your religion at the start of each match, and you can add tenets to the religion. There's up to like 3 tenets, I think you can add. They'll benefit happiness for being like, it's very detailed, of course, because it's Civ. Each one is very detailed, and you'll get like 10% bonus happiness for every city built on the water. You'll get 10% bonus gold for every or like you'll get a bonus gold for every unit killed or something. Like, it depends on how you want to structure the religion, and you can mold the religion to benefit your play style, right? So if you focus on winning culture victories, you can build a religion that gives you more culture points. Militaristic nations can build more militaristic religions. It's very cool. I enjoy it quite a bit.
Yeah, it's
adds a nice new layer to it.
I'll have to check that out. I'll have to. We'll dip into the funds, dip into the Christmas shekels, to check that out. We'll see.
Well, and it's cool because you can play as a European nation, and you can adopt white Shinto.
So yeah, great.
It really comes full circle.
Yeah.
Alrighty, I guess that just about does it. So thanks for listening, guys. We do appreciate it. We'll see you all on Saturday for the next episode of Nationalist Review, and then we'll see you on Monday as I launch my daily show. So we'll be doing 2 pieces of content every day for you guys, at least here on America First Media. So stay tuned for that. Very exciting. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you tonight on America First, and then on Saturday for Nationalist Review. See you later.